Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Is my tie straight? Let's go. A busy show this evening. I'm wearing my Sunday best, and we're bringing our Sunday best for the next 3 hours. My Mark Meets guest is legendary football manager and pundit Ian Holloway. Yes, Ollie himself is live at 10, one of the biggest characters in the beautiful game. Get your questions in now, mark at gbnews.uk. I'll speak to the author of a new book about the impact of lockdown measures. That's also the topic of my big opinion. I'll also be dealing with the EU and the Northern Ireland Protocol. They can stick it where the sun doesn't shine. You won't want to miss that one. Plus my all-star panel, radio legend Mike Parry, TV pundit Ingrid Tarrant, and political commentator Andre Walker. Hashtag the dream team, but the very head of that dream team is Polly, who has the headlines.
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst, and these are your GB News headlines. Today, the Education Secretary became the first government minister to back reducing the COVID isolation period from 7 to 5 days. As he said, he thinks it would help tackle teaching staff shortages. Nadhim Zahawi also said there was no doubt staff absences would rise as pupils return to school and that the next 2 weeks would be bumpy. Mr Zahawi is also insisting lateral flow tests will remain free, following some reports they could be limited to high-risk settings. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and the Labour Party leader had criticised such a move as wrong-headed. But Mr Zahawi says he's puzzled by a report in the Sunday Times newspaper suggesting the universal availability of lateral flow tests may be axed. Meanwhile, court documents claim the Australian government did not give Novak Djokovic an assurance his medical exemption to enter the country would be accepted. The tennis player's legal team has said the authorities indicated he met the requirements for the quarantine-free entry. Djokovic is spending a 4th day in an immigration detention centre ahead of a court hearing tomorrow. Here, the Housing Secretary is expected to put pressure on developers to pay to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats. Michael Gove is going to set out his plans for helping leaseholders trapped in unsafe and unsellable homes tomorrow. But Labour says other non-cladding related costs need to be included in his announcement. The supermarket, Morrisons, will scrap use-by dates on most of its milk from the end of January, all in a bid to reduce food waste. The supermarket will instead place best before dates on 90% of its own brand milk and encourage customers to use a sniff test to check quality. It believes that'll stop millions of pints of its own brand milk from being thrown away every year. And moving away from the UK now, 19 people, including 9 children, have died in an apartment fire in New York, according to the city's mayor. Around 60 people were injured in the fire in the Bronx area of the city, and at least 32 people were admitted to hospital. According to the New York Fire Department, around 200 firefighters were called to the scene at 11 a.m. local time to tackle the blaze at a 19-storey building. The cause of the fire, as yet unknown. A young boy lost in the chaos of the Afghanistan airlift has been reunited with his family. Sahal Ahmadi was just 2 months old when he was handed over to a soldier across an airport wall in Kabul. 29-year-old taxi driver Hamid Safi found him at the airport and took him in. Sahal was finally reunited with his grandfather and other relatives in Kabul on Saturday. You're all up to date. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
Panel tonight. Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, Polly. Well, we've got a packed 3 hours. It's Sunday, January the 9th. It's a red letter day. Lots to get through, let me tell you. My Mark Meets guest is a special one. We've pushed the boat out. It's legendary football manager and pundit Ian Holloway, one of the biggest characters in the beautiful game. He's live at 10. In the big question, I'll be speaking to the academic Dr. Daniel Briggs, who's written a book all about the impact of lockdown measures. It's a fascinating read. Also, that's the topic of my big opinion in 2 minutes' time. I'll also be dealing with the EU and that damaging Northern Ireland protocol. It's got to go. Reacting to the big news stories of the day is my all-star panel. And tonight, we have TV pundit Ingrid Tarrant, radio and Fleet Street legend Mike Porky Parry, and political commentator and Housewives' favourite Andre Walker. You've always got to have some eye candy on the show. Now, my priority is to get your views on the national television airwaves. So drop me a line between now and 11, that's right, over the next 2 hours. Mark at gbnews.uk. You know the best bit of my show is when I hear from you, so get in touch right now. And what's happening after 11? Well, it's another instalment of Headliners, in which I'm joined by 2 top comedians having a comedic romp through tomorrow's newspapers. Tonight, I'll be joined by the highly talented Nick Dixon and Diane Spencer. So a big 3 hours to come. It's brass monkeys outside, so get the kettle on, fire up the radiator, stick a log on the fire, and let's get to work. The current struggles over the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, which places an invisible border down the Irish Sea, are rooted in what I would call Brexit denial syndrome. That's right, Brexit denial syndrome, BDS. Now, this flawed and unworkable solution of a Northern Ireland Protocol, which is destabilising a hard-won peace in the region and damaging its economy, exists as a monument to the refusal of Brussels to accept the referendum result of 2016. And it's more evidence that the Eurocrats just don't accept reality. They are suffering from Brexit denial syndrome. Now, I voted Remain. I was a Remainer. I'm married to a German. That's commitment to the European cause. But there's one simple reason why I am now for Brexit. Because the majority of the people voted for it. That is how democracy actually works. Remainers in this country have continued to debate a decision that's already been made. They've got Brexit denial syndrome too. And of course, they've spent years trying to reverse that decision, including the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, the architect of Labour's second referendum policy, which of course lost them the last election. People are still battling that referendum decision, like the Japanese soldiers still fighting the Second World War in the early 1960s. Too many people on both sides of the channel didn't get the memo. Brexit has happened. The Northern Ireland Protocol, which disgracefully divides our country, an unprecedented scenario anywhere in history, and one which should never have been sanctioned in the first place, is there to protect the European single market, or so they say. But needless and politically motivated over-enforcement of customs rules is really a political game. It's ideological, it's impractical, and it's punishment for our decision to leave. It's profoundly immoral for a foreign bloc to cause friction in the flow of goods from one part of a sovereign nation to another. A perfectly sensible solution is available, and one that will be pursued, I'm sure, by our impressive Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss. There she is, an impressive figure. Well, it's very interesting. Writing in the Mail on Sunday newspaper today, their journalist David Jones cites the Centre for Brexit Policy, who propose an amazing solution: a mutual enforcement of customs regulations whereby the UK and the EU would each take responsibility for ensuring that no non-compliant goods were exported into the other's territory, thus protecting both internal markets. Sounds sensible. But if common sense and pragmatism do not prevail, then Liz Truss has every right to trigger Article 60, which eliminates that border altogether. All hell will break loose, but so be it. Our willingness to stand firm under the leadership of Lord Frost, that was over a year ago. Our willingness to walk away at that time was what got Brexit done. That got the deal across the line. And Lord Frost is quite the loss to the cabinet. Enforcing these needless rules in terms of customs across the Irish Sea isn't just impractical, it's not just economically illogical, but it's deeply unethical too, and dangerous, as playing politics with trade risks lives. Unionist groups are growing in anger about the division of our country, which unfortunately is feeding the monster of hardline extremists whose next step could tragically be violence. The Northern Ireland Protocol risks restarting the Troubles if that hasn't happened already. And be clear, in time, those who won't take a more sensible approach and seek a long-term, practical and flexible solution will have blood on their hands. I know that the result of the referendum was tough for the EU. I get it, but tough luck. That is democracy. And the departure of a member state from the bloc, which happens to be connected by land to an ongoing member, the Republic of Ireland, is always going to be complicated. C'est la vie. Merde happens. Forgive my French. Allow me to illustrate my point that all of this is political. If Scotland were to become independent, it would doubtless be welcomed into the bosom of the EU, at which point they would face exactly the same issues with the Scottish border to England. Scotland would be in the EU and the single market, but Wales and England not. At that point, it's very clear the EU would find a practical solution because, surprise, surprise, at that point, it would be in their interest, as they would be keen to absorb Scotland into the project. So you see, all of this comes down to political will. It's all a decision, folks. And don't give me any guff about the protocol being there to prevent a hard border in Northern Ireland. We will never erect one. The closest we've ever come to the threat of a border between the north and south of Ireland came from, wait for it, the EU themselves. The EU Commission threatened just that during the row over vaccine supplies last year. Now, I've got a lot of faith in Liz Truss. She is our Foreign Secretary, of course. In Liz, we trust. As Trade Secretary, she negotiated a flurry of trade deals with countries all over the world, with many more in the pipeline. But this is her greatest challenge yet. If she faces off the EU and creates a lasting settlement so that we can move on from this and actually have a positive relationship with Europe, it will be her great legacy. And it could nudge her closer in time to the occupancy of number 10 itself. Supportive of a low-tax economy, economic and personal freedom, and a disdain for extreme political correctness, Liz Truss is clearly casting herself, as you've just seen there in those images, in the mould of the Iron Lady, Mrs. T. She wants to be Mrs. T 2.0. But the message from Liz Truss to her European counterparts must be a simple one. EU turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning. The cosy COVID consensus is crumbling. I loved this tweet from my brilliant colleague Dan Wootton earlier today. Here's what he tweeted. The lockdown cheerleaders at the BBC devoted an entire episode of their Sunday morning news show to learning to live with COVID. Only a year and a half too late, folks. Much of the damage is now locked in. Shameful. Brilliant stuff. And Dan is back tomorrow at 9. Now you watch. In the months and years to come, the greatest proponents for all of these ruinous COVID measures that don't appear to have made a discernible difference compared to countries and territories that did so little will be rewriting their own history in a similar way to those who now claim never to have supported the Iraq War. With the societal, economic, health and human damage from the measures we've seen, a set of unprecedented and experimental measures to control the virus, this will be like the Iraq War times 100. The Iraq War on acid. It won't just be a Tony Blair figure that you can blame in relation to that conflict. It will be an entire generation of scientists, medics, politicians and media outlets who will own this. They and they alone will own the non-COVID death toll, which is obviously going to dwarf that of COVID. They will own the national debt. They will own the mental health tsunami. They will own the NHS waiting list, upwards of 6 million and beyond. They will own a sadder, diminished and angrier society. They will own damaged children. You mark my words, one by one, almost every measure that we've seen will be discredited. It was months ago that experts widely accepted that the endless hand sanitising wasn't a key measure as the virus is airborne. Do you remember when our hands were red raw and blistered at the start of the pandemic? There's evidence to suggest those wretched Perspex screens everywhere, catastrophic for the environment, of course, and unsightly, may actually assist the spread of COVID by trapping the aerosols for longer. Well done, everyone. The surgical and cloth masks worn by the vast majority of people in this country are so useless, they're not even accepted in Austria or Germany. They won't accept them. They just don't count as face masks. Liana Wen, a medical analyst for lockdown-loving news channel CNN in America, a woman who has backed the most stringent measures, told the channel, don't wear a cloth mask. Cloth masks, she said, are little more than facial decorations. Blimey, I might get a nose ring. And if those super-duper N95 masks are so effective, why are cases in Austria, where they are now enforced outside, going through the roof? Imagine that, folks. An outdoor mask mandate. Welcome to hell. I was talking to a family friend recently and COVID came up, as it does. And she said, I don't read newspapers anymore or look at the telly. She literally said, I hate the media. What a line. I hate the media. But who could blame her, as they have fearmongered constantly and peddled the doctrine of lockdowns, masks, distancing and jabbing. And all they've done is spread fear across the community. No analysis, no scrutiny, no common sense, and no moral or ethical judgment, in my view. In press conference after press conference, it's been, why didn't we lock down more, sooner, harder, faster? Why do they slavishly back those measures? Well, some commercial operators are being bankrolled by government advertising around COVID. The Beeb may want to please the government for a better licence fee settlement. But almost all of them have pushed for these measures because fear gets you clicks and viewers. And these measures don't affect them. Most people in the media can afford lockdowns, curfews, social distancing, bubbles and work from home orders. Most of them are deemed essential workers and can come and go as they please. They've got fancy Apple Mac computers, well-appointed flats and houses. Often they've got capacious gardens, strong internet signals, and plenty of Pinot Grigio chilling in the fridge. Much of the media has let the public down in the course of this pandemic by failing to offer a 360 view of the issues around the pandemic. The people, in my view, have been gaslit, terrified, and bullied for almost 2 years. There has been a media bubble. And at GB News, we are here to prick it. Let me quote you from two luminaries. First up, Professor Jay Bhattacharya, one of the most respected medics on the planet, head of medicine at the world-renowned Stanford University in California. He's also an expert in infectious diseases. He has called lockdowns the biggest public health mistake of all time. And let me quote you another luminary, a great thinker, the comedian Abby Roberts, because everyone is allowed an opinion, an extremely intelligent person. She simply said, this will be the biggest I told you so in history. How right she is. Now, in spite of my anger at the, in my view, needless suffering that we've seen in the course of this pandemic for a very nasty virus, absolutely, but one non-fatal to the vast majority of the population. And in spite of my anger about how children have been treated, don't forget kids as young as 11 will be back in masks tomorrow at school, in spite of inconclusive evidence commissioned by the government that they actually work. And in spite of my dismay and pain on behalf of the millions who have been through hell and who will continue to pay for these measures, I personally will forgive and I will move on. But only if lessons are learned, if freedom of speech and thought within science and within the media are reinstated, and only if this madness is never allowed to happen again. Not on my watch. This is GB News. That's my view. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you now, especially if you disagree. mark@gbnews.uk, but please get your thoughts coming in. We are travelling business class with my panel tonight. These people are a triple threat. They've got brains, looks and personality. First of all, Ingrid Tarrant, TV expert, broadcaster and woman about town. Great to have you on the show, Ingrid. Also, the man who some are calling the next Mike Parry, it's Andre Walker. There we are. We just thought we'd confuse our little team there. And of course, the brilliant, we've got Andrew Walker, we've got Mike Parry as well.
Thank you.
So great to have you here. It is the dream team. Where should we start? Mike Parry, can I ask you, first of all, what about the Northern Ireland Protocol? Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, is meeting the EU on Thursday for face-to-face talks. And I'm really worried that we'll see a return of the Troubles. What's your view?
I hope we won't see a return to the Troubles. I spent about 12 months in Ireland at the height of the Troubles during the hunger strikes, OK? And I saw the way that society can be so quickly lit on fire with the terrible sectarian troubles that happened there. Did you see, Mark, only a couple of days ago, and asked my panellists as well, a fantastic story detailing how Brixham is doing in terms of a fishing port in this country?
Amazing.
Brixham, right, down in Devon. Now, everybody said the fishing industry was going to collapse after the Brexit situation allegedly left out a few rules about fishing. Brixham is now showing record profits. And do you know why it's doing it? It's doing it because it's catching record numbers of fish, and the people down there who are the thrust of the fishing industry in this country have invented a whole new load of electronic measures to count the fish, to distribute the fish, to send 60% of the fish back into Europe, and it's all working, and it's working perfectly. And that's what should be happening with the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Yep.
But it's not, because the Europeans don't want it to work. They want to make out that it's impossible to do it. Go down to Devon, please, and see what's happening to our fishing industry and how Europe itself is benefiting from the thriving industry there, which has literally invented new technology since Brexit, over 2 years ago now, to make it work. If it can work there, it can work in Northern Ireland. You don't want a hard border. I've seen hard borders in Northern Ireland, not all the way around the border, but I've seen police checkpoints, I've seen army checkpoints in South Lamar, and they are terrifying and intimidating things to come across, and we don't want to see that again.
Andre, Brexit denial syndrome.
Yeah, well, I find the whole thing extraordinary vis-a-vis Northern Ireland. Particularly, there's some dishonesty here. First and foremost, only 16% of exports from Northern Ireland go to the Republic of Ireland, whereas 35% go to the rest of the United Kingdom. So the idea that you would put a border in the United Kingdom is clearly more economically damaging than putting a border in Ireland. But the bit that people do not seem to remember about this, and I'm sure Mike will attest to this, in the 1970s, the hard border in Ireland was principally a counter-terrorism operation. It was not about smuggling goods. I've had friends of mine who were in the parachute regiment, and they would open up consignments of pigs and condoms. Bizarrely, those were the things that people smuggled. I've no idea why. But of course, they would allow those through because they're not there to worry about cigarettes. They're not there to worry about alcohol. They're not there to worry about the prohibition of condoms, which exist in the Republic of Ireland at the time. They're looking for guns, bullets and Semtex. So the idea that because you have a differentiated tax regime or a differentiated system of food standards means that you're going to throw up a border is mad. But let me say something else. At the height of the Northern Ireland Troubles, there were 35,000 British soldiers. The entire Irish army is only 7,000 people. And let's be clear, the British hard border didn't work in the 1970s. So the idea that the EU would inflame tensions in order to annex Northern Ireland is what is the real problem here. There is no reason whatsoever why you can't have differentiated rules between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. They've had it for years in terms of cigarette, alcohol tax and fuel duty. And whilst they've had one or two problems with fuel duty specifically, it hasn't been a reason to have a hard border back.
Ingrid, the European Union would argue that this is the nature of the single market. Dems the rules.
Do you know, I don't know. I don't really understand this at all because it's an argument on top of an argument. But I want to say one thing straight off, Mark, because there's two things that really, really impressed me about you. Three, actually. First of all, you're a super guy. But you are vaccinated, and yet you have enormous respect for the people that aren't. You voted to remain, but you have enormous respect for the results. And actually, we're all Brexiteers here, funnily enough, the three of us sitting here. And I really do applaud the fact that you are recognising that and not being a Ramona in this situation. Truthfully, Mark, I don't know the answer to this, but it is absolutely clear you can't have a hard border. The Good Friday Agreement, it just takes away absolutely everything that we valued. And this is moving forward. I don't know what the EU are playing at. It was messy at the time that we came out. It should perhaps have been resolved, but then, or maybe we should just go, you know, no deal and just walked away, which maybe been a better thing altogether.
I think we all know, don't we, that the main reason this is all happening is because the EU wanted to keep one foot inside the United Kingdom, and they wanted the United Kingdom to be forced to keep one foot in the European Union. That's what it's all about. Nothing to do with normal trade, nothing to do with relations between one trading bloc and another, just self-interest from the Europeans.
And what their solution, remember, to this, let's remind ourselves of the situation with rabies, right? At the moment, you cannot take a dog from GB to Northern Ireland in case, because they're worried about rabies, which we have not had a case of in the United Kingdom since something like 1926. But of course, what is the solution? If you want to take your dog to Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom has to join the European veterinary collective rules, right? Which so effectively every single time we are talking about just dragging the United Kingdom back into the European Union. But by the way, it's become fashionable to talk about this ridiculous concept, international law, which was basically invented in the Inns of Court in about 1976. But anyway, it doesn't really exist. But to the extent it does exist, it's about breaching treaties. We have a treaty with the Republic of Ireland that says that neither of us will build a hard border. We should hold them to that legal requirement. And if they want to break that treaty, then we will break it as well. We should be turning to these people and saying, we're sick of the threats. We're sick of the way that Varadkar effectively almost caused a war in Ireland. And by the way, it wouldn't be Varadkar and his chums running up the Shankill Road with a machine gun. It'll be your family doing it. So let's just be clear on that point for a start. These people wound up this because they want to annex Northern Ireland. They should be told no hard border and we'll take military action to prevent it.
What are your thoughts? Mark at GBnews.uk. I'm delighted to say my Dream Team panel are with me till 11. And don't forget, 2 top comedians after 11 for another instalment of Headliners. But next, what has been the social impact of lockdowns? I'll be joined by the author of a new book on that very subject, Dr. Daniel Briggs, and legendary football manager, one of the biggest characters in the beautiful game, Ian Holloway, is live at 10 for Mark Meets. A busy 3 hours. See you in 2.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead then to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy with hill fog in the west. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle edging eastwards, so let's take a look at the detail. Well, very cloudy and murky across the southwest of England on Monday morning, with extensive hill fog over the moors. Patchy rain as well lying over eastern areas. It'll be dry but mostly cloudy as it starts off in the southeast, with the best of any brightness in the east, feeling chilly too. Wales starts the day on a wet note with outbreaks of rain or drizzle for most. It'll be murky with low cloud and hill fog. In contrast, it'll be a mostly dry picture for the northwest of England, although it will also be cloudy. There'll be low cloud and hill fog with patchy rain arriving from the west. And a similar story for the northeast of England on Monday morning. Another cloudy start with the best of any brightness along the coast, feeling rather chilly as well. Outbreaks of rain covering most of Scotland, except for the far east, where it'll start cold and dry. The rain falling as snow over the highest mountains. Northern Ireland starting cloudy and murky with hill fog and a little light drizzle in places, breezy too around the coasts, but feeling generally milder. Rain, drizzle and low cloud slowly edging eastwards throughout Monday, and it's going to be milder than of late for all. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'll get to your reactions to my big opinion monologue shortly. Cowell, our head of digital, is currently crafting both videos, one on the Northern Ireland Protocol, which I think is going to restart the troubles in Northern Ireland. It's got to go. And my views on lockdowns, which takes us to our next guest. It's time for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, were lockdowns a necessary measure to slow the spread of coronavirus? Of course, it was a policy that was seen globally, and therefore surely that many people can't be wrong. Or were lockdowns a dangerous experiment that backfired? Well, there are strong views on both sides, but Dr. Daniel Briggs has written a fascinating book on that very subject. It's called Lockdown: Social Harm in the COVID-19 Era. It's winning rave reviews. He put the volume together in the company of 4 other academics: Luke Telford, Anthony Lloyd, Anthony Ellis and Justin Kotzé. And I'm delighted to say Dr. Briggs joins me now. Hi, Daniel.
Good evening.
Thanks very much for joining me. First of all, why did you decide to actually write this book? Why does this book need to exist, Daniel?
Because no one else is going to write it, basically. This is the sad situation we're in, particularly from a social scientist, academic environment. When this all started, a lot of sociologists, criminologists turned their back on all the burning questions they should be asking, and did nothing about investigating what we now see to be the terrible ramifications of lockdowns and restrictions on not only Western society, but also the most vulnerable, the most poor, people in desperate situations. We haven't heard from them, and the idea of the book is to give them voice, to find out how and why they have experienced these measures and the situations in which they've been put in. Incidentally, it's a miracle the book was even published, because when we approached 9 publishers, 8 didn't even respond to us, and the 9th told us it smelt like a whiff of conspiracy. So you can see that even us as academics, when we try to just simply present the other side of the picture, we have been censored. And it's just tragic that it takes us, as academics working in an unfunded study, spending our own time out of the heavy teaching loads and things like that, family responsibilities, to try and go forward and find out from as many people around the world in different socioeconomic situations, from different class bands, from different countries and cultures, what exactly happened to them during the lockdown. And sadly, some very, very terrible things happened. And really, I suppose the essential aim of the book is to draw people out of their comfort zone. You described perfectly earlier on your show when you said that it was okay, lockdowns were okay for a section of people who could work from home and they had their Netflix and all these wonderful entertainment systems. But what about the people that actually had to try and continue to make a living? What happened to the people when their industries that they were working in were shut down? How did they support their families? So we went about trying to find out this and essentially give some sort of balance to the whole picture, as well as try and entice the reader to empathize with situations that were not their own. We're not trying to convince anyone. We believe there's a virus. However, when you look at the book and you look at the evidence we present, which is entirely objective, you can see that the lockdowns not only did immediate irreparable damage, but will continue to do medium to long term severe damage to society societies across the world.
Of course, all of you, all the contributors to the book are esteemed academics. So what was your methodology in putting all of this data together? Because the book's not opinion, is it? You're just basically crunching the numbers and looking at the real world impacts.
No, it's not like we just say these things because we feel like it or because we're, want to be radical. We've actually got solid testimonies from these people. We've got observations from Facebook forums. We've got online survey results from thousands.
Now, we've just lost Daniel Briggs. We're going to recreate that line to him. He's speaking us live from Madrid. I think it's very interesting, the debate around lockdown measures. My personal view is that at the start of the pandemic, this was an unknown virus. It didn't have a name at the end of 2019. But of course, in 2020, everything changed. And I think we can all cut the authorities some slack for having had lockdowns at the very beginning. I don't know anybody that didn't accept the idea of 3 weeks to flatten the curve, to squash the sombrero. But here we are, almost 2 years later, and I think it's very important that this book is there to ask a question, which is, was it the right thing to do? Daniel, delighted that you've re-established a line to us. You've not been cancelled, I promise. Not on GB News.
Right.
Are you right wing? Are you a conspiracy theorist? Are you a fan of, you know, the Bill Gates theory, 5G, Piers Corbyn, that kind of thing?
In the eyes of even some of my longest friends and most of my colleagues, yes, I'm all of those things, which is really sad that even if you just want to simply talk about the other side of the story, that you're branded these things automatically. But this just tells us how strong the central narrative is and how powerful the kind of companies, elite, political elite, and those people in positions of power can control how information is and what information is released to people. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm none of those things, because throughout my career, I've always tried to give a balanced picture of how governments treat their citizens. So why, when a COVID-19 pandemic comes along and certain restrictions are implemented for political reasons to control that virus, should I be any different to that? But of course, anyone that is telling anything other than the central narrative, or is even making critical analysis against it, is all of the things you just listed.
Yes, and obviously I put that question to you with my tongue in my cheek. I honestly can't understand why a health emergency should be divided along political lines. It makes no sense whatsoever, and I think that calling people conspiracy theorists or right-wing is just a way of silencing people, belittling them, gaslighting them, and I think we've got to have an open debate. Now, your book contributes to that brilliantly, to offer a defence to governments around the world. You would say, wouldn't you, Daniel, that the majority of scientific opinion seems to have been supportive of these measures? Most countries have had lockdowns and other such measures. That many people can't be wrong, and all they wanted to do is save lives.
Well, it's funny you say that, because a document published by the World Health Organization in November 2019 doesn't even recommend lockdowns or even border closures, which was another mistake that was made in pandemic contexts. Yet, as soon as China started to lock down and then country after country followed suit, it seemed to be quite unusually the situation where everyone was staying at home, or those people that did have homes. So I don't think that it was really something that was necessarily inspired by a particular scientific background, because really every country's done it, and really, to me, the situation is much worse. I think the main thing that's happened is that they've argued that they will save lives, but really it's the crumbling health systems which were in place in the first place, of which not only pre-pandemic they had not bolstered, and even during the pandemic there's been no evidence that these similar health systems have received increasing investment. So again, we're dealing with the same situation.
Daniel, the clock's against us. I'd urge everybody to take a read of your book. What are a couple of the key headlines that emerge from the book?
I mean, we try to go to town with looking at how people have become sort of very compliant to the measures, and look at how people have been rendered vulnerable as a consequence of the extent, the frequency of messaging, and the symbolisms in public space about fear and threat and risk. And we try to draw out the human sort of feeling from different people around the world as a consequence of that. And we try to look at the kind of residue as well, like what have we been left with mentally, the drug overdoses, the suicides, the 120 million people that lost their jobs in 2020, the number of people who have to survive in these precarious migrant worker circumstances, who rely on open borders and free movement and things like that. Refugees, we spoke to refugees, in Europe who even more ostracized now because of the border closures and rampant policies. So, it really has turned up the heat against the poor and vulnerable and excluded. And that's just the central finding of the book. And it's a tough read, but it will certainly bring the reality of the situation home to those who pick it up.
Well, I'm very glad it's been published. Daniel, just a few seconds to go. The majority of the public have supported most of these COVID measures. Of course, history will judge whether it was the right thing to do. The government and SAGE and many leading scientists around the world will argue that lockdowns and these measures were necessary. They will stand by that. Other people think it's been the mother of all cock-ups, including the aforementioned Dr. Professor Jay Bhattacharya, who's one of the most respected medics in the world, who thinks we've made a big mistake. If these measures were a mistake, do you think the truth will out?
I would love it if it does, and I wish I could see into the future to see precisely the direction of all of this. But I will say that I do think that this year is pivotal. If you look at how things are bubbling under the surface now with the unreported protests going on around the world, the anger and dissent which is being caused because of the foisting of the vaccines on everyone, the conversion to digital passports to access certain places, I think this has a time limit. And I do think this year either we will completely accept everything that's going on, or we will see a huge backlash and potentially violence and real social problems.
Dr. Briggs, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the publication of the book. The book is called Lockdown: Social Harm in the COVID-19 Era. It's by Dr. Daniel Briggs, and it's out now. Lots more to come. Coming up in Mark Meets at 10, I'll be chatting to a huge name in football, one of the biggest characters in the beautiful game, the very beautiful Ian Holloway. Get your questions in now. He was a legend, of course, as a player and as a manager, and he's top pundit into the bargain. Mark at gbnews.uk. But coming up next, have you given up your New Year's resolutions already? Today, apparently, it's a day when most of us do drop the ball on that one. So we'll discuss that with Mike Parry, Ingrid Tarrant and Andre Walker in our news agenda. So much to get through. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
With me tonight, my fantastic panel reacting to the big stories of the day. A TV personality Ingrid Tarrant. Fabulous. Ingrid, can't wait to have her views on the show. Also, social commentator Andre Walker and broadcaster Mike Parry. So lots of stories to get through, let me tell you. And don't forget, of course, after 11, another episode of Headliners, in which we take a comedic romp through the papers with two brilliant stand-ups, Diane Spencer and the very talented and very entertaining Nick Dixon. But let's start with this one, Rec Savers. Have we forgotten how to save money? If we have, then it's a worry, because it might cost more than you think to retire comfortably. The number crunchers at Royal London have worked out that to receive a comfortable income from the age of 55, you'd have to save £1,360 a month. Wait for it, from the age of 22. Who's done that? If you're willing to delay retirement until 70, you'd need to put away £555 a month. So, well, let's talk to my panel about this. I'll start with you, if I may, Ingrid. Are you a saver?
Yes, I am. I've always been a saver. I've always been quite sensible. I think it was instilled in me from when I was a child. Credit cards, of course, were kind of a bit of an exception as I got older, but sort of you can't have it until you've got the money to do it and don't get into debt. That was on my pocket money. But no, I always have been a saver, and I've been sensible because you just don't know what's around the corner, and I worry about being in debt, not being able to afford things. I'm not over extravagant, actually. You know, I just want to be careful a little bit. But, you know, what was interesting, 20% of working people want to retire at the age of 55. It's quite interesting because I thought that it would be higher than that. But, you know, I think the problem with society now, and they aren't saving, is because somebody will take care of them. And that wasn't so much how it was as I was growing up. There's a welfare state. If you haven't got it, it'll be sorted out. If you can't afford it, if you can't afford your home, you'll be put in a council house. It'll be sorted out. So everything is kind of like blameless. In society, you don't have to be responsible anymore. You don't have to be accountable for your pennies because somebody will take care of you. And I think that is the kind of trend that is in the back of people's minds. So why should they save? And just live the life, spend the money, have a good time, and then at the end of the day, if there's nothing there, somebody will take care of you. The government will take care of you. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting. Andre, how much have you got stashed under your mattress?
Zero. A couple of old underpants and some socks, I'd have thought, under my...
Can you sell those?
Under my bed. By the way, I think Ingrid's doing herself down. The welfare state was invented before she was born. Right, she's not that old.
I am a dinosaur.
But actually, I take the point she makes. The point she makes is that when the welfare state first came about, lots of people took the view that it was a last resort. Now it's become a lifestyle. And the way that we've ruined Northern England over the years by telling people that living on welfare and being unemployed and never putting anything aside is a legitimate lifestyle choice. I hope that we're going to start reinvigorating these communities by saying that work is the most important thing for your life. Frankly, look, we are in the midst of the worst self-inflicted disaster this economy has ever suffered. I mean, I don't know what the government's going to do, but we all know that plenty of people now owe their tax, self-employed people, people with businesses and so on and so forth. And I don't think the money's going to come in because those savings that we're supposed to be paying for things like taxes, supposed to be paying for your future, supposed to be paying for your retirement, actually have been spent on this catastrophic mishandling of the economy over the pandemic.
Mike Parry, this is cultural, isn't it, saving? There are countries in the Far East, like Japan, and also in Germany as well, a culture of putting a bit away for a rainy day. We don't seem to have that culture here, do we?
Well, first of all, can I take exception with my colleague Andre here, talking about people in the north of England who've been taught to live on welfare and poverty-stricken and all that. Speak for yourself, pal. I come from the north of England, and I can tell you my mother put away £2 a week for the electricity, £2 a week for the gas, and £2 a week for the telephone. That's how we got through life, OK? I have to hold my hands up like this to admit that I have done very well out of life because I'm a baby boomer, all right? I worked for a national newspaper for just 15 years, and that provides me with a pension, if I want to draw it, of about 4 times what the state pension is. That's how lucky we were in my day when I was growing up in Fleet Street, and we had pension schemes. And all the big newspapers had them. You know, England will know about this. It's the way it was. Also, I've always, I know this might sound ridiculous, but I don't mean it to, I've always had a terrible fear of poverty. So throughout my life, when I've had pretty good jobs in the media, I've always decided to use some of it to do something else, like, for instance, buying property or investing in a portfolio of shares or something like that. So I'm in the very fortunate position now, in my mid-60s, where I'm very comfortable, but because I am, I feel almost guilt and shame that there are so many people in our society who have nothing like the resources I've got, and I absolutely believe that from the age of 15 or 16, youngsters should be taught from then, because they could have Saturday jobs, they could be doing paper rounds from the age of 13 like I did. They should be taught from that very young age, invest now for your future. You don't think it's important now, but in 40 years' time, you will thank anybody who told you to do it for doing it. That's what we should.
Although it is worth.
Harry, the youngsters haven't got your work ethic. They just want to. They want to Netflix and chill.
Well, they should have. Yeah. I had my first job at 13 doing a paper round. By the time I was 16, I had 4 jobs at the weekend, working on a petrol station, still doing my paper round, working on the bread van. I just kept doing it. I just kept wanting to accumulate money through fear, and I mean this, fear of thinking, well, one of these days I'll have to give up work. Will I have anywhere to live? I don't want to live in a council flat.
Exactly, you speak my language, but we are the same sort of age.
Yeah.
And I did exactly the same thing. I worked, I did holiday jobs and everything, but I was hedonistic. I wanted a car, I wanted a radio, I wanted a stereo.
And me.
But I instilled this in my children as well. And my daughter, from the age of 10, she was doing newspaper rounds and things, and they were getting up earlier. They never got something for nothing. It was, and my father taught us that as well. Money doesn't grow on trees. What are you going to do for it? You don't get without sort of exchange and everything. And I think it's a wonderful philosophy, but it is a generational thing. You're absolutely right, Mark. And Mike and I are of the same generation, and that's how. That's how it was. But children are spoilt these days. They don't know what it is like to work at all.
I think it is worth pointing out, though, that for most modern families, the amount of money that you put into your pension will drastically increase in the last 10, 15 years of your employed life. Because what people will tend to do is struggle for a house in their 20s, have kids in their 30s, then maybe towards the end of their 40s, the kids have flown the nest. And then principally when you're in your 50s, you're going to put a lot of money towards the pension, but it's an incredibly hefty contribution if you do it that late. But I think the reason I make that point, by the way, Mark, is I don't think that somebody who's 30 years old who doesn't have a pension yet should be absolutely terrified. They will need to take some action, but it's not. They're not at death's door yet, so they'll be okay.
I love my panel tonight, and so do you. The emails are coming in thick and fast. I'll catch up on them shortly. Thank you so much for all of your correspondence. Both of the big opinion monologues are now up on the Twitter at GBNews. Take a look and get your views across. And the brilliant Ian Holloway is next, so drop an email to me with your questions for one of the biggest characters in football. Mark at gbnews.uk is the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead then to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy with hill fog in the west. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle edging eastwards, so let's take a look at the detail. Well, very cloudy and murky across the southwest of England on Monday morning, with extensive hill fog over the moors. Patchy rain as well lying over eastern areas. It'll be dry but mostly cloudy as it starts off in the southeast, with the best of any brightness in the east, feeling chilly too. Wales starts the day on a wet note with outbreaks of rain or drizzle for most. It'll be murky with low cloud and hill fog. In contrast, it'll be a mostly dry picture for the northwest of England, although it will also be cloudy. There'll be low cloud and hill fog with patchy rain arriving from the west. And a similar story for the northeast of England on Monday morning. Another cloudy start with the best of any brightness along the coast, feeling rather chilly as well. Outbreaks of rain covering most of Scotland, except for the far east, where it'll start cold and dry. The rain falling as snow over the highest mountains. Northern Ireland starting cloudy and murky with hill fog and a little light drizzle in places, breezy too around the coasts, but feeling generally milder. Rain, drizzle and low cloud slowly edging eastwards throughout Monday, and it's going to be milder than of late for all. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Big reaction to my big opinion monologues on the EU, the Northern Ireland Protocol, and on COVID measures. How about this on the EU? This is Tez, who says, great show as always, Mark, and I applaud you for the fact that you accepted the Brexit vote as a Remainer. If only more people would take the same stance as you. But we know they won't. That's them and we are us. Keep up the great committed hard work you all do at GB News. It's so refreshing to watch a real news channel that offers a debate on both sides of an issue, which at the end of the day is what we all want. People power will reign with your contribution. Well, we can't do it without you, Tel, and thank you so much for watching and for your excellent email. Keep them coming, mark@gbnews.uk. I've had hundreds of emails. I'll get to as many as I can in the next hour. This is Mark Dolan tonight. We're available on DAB+ as well, so if you're listening, it's wonderful to have your company, and it feels great to be back in radio and on TV and on your smartphone. Coming up, a truly special Mark Meets guest, a legend on the pitch and as a manager, one of the biggest characters in the beautiful game. I'm so excited about meeting Ian Ollie Holloway. That's right, the gaffer's up in the next few minutes. And reacting to the big stories of the day, my fantastic panel and my email throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. And I'm hosting Headliners at 11 with two top comedians. But first up, the news with the ever serious and truly marvellous Polly.
Good evening. The Education Secretary has become the first government minister to back reducing the COVID isolation period from 7 to 5 days, as he thinks it would help tackle teaching staff shortages in schools. Nadeem Zahawi says there's no doubt staff absences will rise as pupils return to school and that the next 2 weeks could be bumpy. He's also insisting lateral flow tests will remain free following some reports they could be limited to high-risk settings. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and the Labour Party had criticised such a move as wrong-headed. But Mr Zahawi says he's puzzled by a report in the Sunday Times suggesting universal availability of lat flow tests will be axed. A teenage girl has been arrested in connection with an investigation into the murder of a 35-year-old man in Christchurch. Dorset police say the 15-year-old girl has been detained on suspicion of assisting an offender following the death of Edward Reeve. Two 16-year-old boys remain in police custody, having been arrested on suspicion of murder earlier this week. The Housing Secretary is expected to warn those who've profited from building unsafe homes that we are coming for you. Tomorrow, Michael Gove will set out his plans for helping leaseholders trapped in unsafe and unsellable homes. He will seek to put pressure on property developers to pay to replace dangerous cladding. But Labour says other non-cladding related costs need to be included in his announcement. Meanwhile, court documents in Australia claim the government there did not give Novak Djokovic an assurance his medical exemption to enter the country would be accepted. The tennis player's legal team had said the authorities indicated he did meet the requirements for quarantine-free entry. Djokovic has spent a fourth day in an immigration detention centre ahead of a court hearing, which begins shortly. And away from the UK, 19 people, including 9 children, have died in an apartment fire in New York, according to the city's mayor. Around 60 people were injured in the fire in the Bronx area of the city. At least 32 people were admitted to hospital. According to the New York Fire Department, around 200 firefighters were called to the scene at 11 a.m. local time to tackle the blaze at the 19-storey building you can see in the pictures there. The cause of the fire, unknown. A young boy lost in the chaos of the Afghanistan airlift has been reunited with his family. Sahal Ahmadi was just 2 months old when he was handed over to a soldier across an airport wall in Kabul. Well, 29-year-old taxi driver Hamid Safi found him in the airport and decided to take him in. Sahal was finally reunited with his grandfather and other relatives in Kabul on Saturday. You're up to date. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Mark.
Where do I start with your magnificent emails? Big reaction to the big opinion monologue. It's on Twitter now at GBNews. Avis has said, well done, Mark, for exposing the true reasons for the EU's arrogant and petulant reaction to trade and Brexit. I blame Boris for the situation and his pathetic agreement, so I hope Liz Truss has a free hand in dealing with the enemy. If not, Boris will roll over and give in again. Shameful. Andrew says, Mark, we in Greater Manchester are just about to have a CAZ clean air zone imposed on us, despite voting no by 4-1 against it in a local referendum. So much for Brexit and taking back control. Alan says, Mark, why can't we return to the system of trade with Northern Ireland and Europe that existed prior to our membership with the EU? Many are emailing, pointing out or taking the view that we were hoodwinked into EU membership by joining, at the time, the common market, which was supposed to be about trade. But of course, it went on to become a lot more than that. How about this from Christine? Dear Mark, like you, I voted Remain. Unlike you, I still feel that remaining in the EU would be better for many reasons, peace being the most important. I have, though, accepted the result, but unlike you, I will not promote Brexit and nor make excuses for our arrogance. We've always been an arrogant race, which is not an appealing trait. Well, Christine, thank you so much for email, which is an excellent counterbalance to the conversation we've had. I'll get to more of your brilliant emails. You know it's the best bit of my show, so keep them coming. Thank you so much for that. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, entertainment, business, sport and beyond. Tonight we have a real treat, one of the biggest and most impressive characters in the world of professional football. Ian Holloway was a top player in the 80s and 90s, a no-nonsense midfielder with QPR, where he made almost 150 league appearances in a 5-year spell. He had 3 stints at his boyhood club of Bristol Rovers, and that's where he spent the bulk of his playing career. And he was part of the Wimbledon team that famously won promotion to the top flight in 1986. A playing career many can only dream of, but he's achieved as much, if not more, as a football manager, a leader of men, taking the helm at Bristol Rovers, QPR, Plymouth Argyle, Leicester City, Crystal Palace, Millwall, and most recently, Grimsby Town. Blimey, he's had more jobs than I've had. And Ian was the boss of Blackpool when the Tangerine dream came to life, leading them into the Premier League. What an achievement. Ian, known as Ollie, which is the name of his hugely entertaining autobiography, is also in demand as a TV and radio pundit. He's always had a way with words. Who could forget his famous press conferences like this one that sadly would probably get him cancelled these days? Take a look.
Yeah, I have said it before, you know, a win's a win. And put it in gentleman's terms, if you go out on a night and you're looking for a young lady and you pull one, you know, that's it. Some weeks they're good looking and some weeks they're not the best. And our performance today would have been not the best looking bird, but at least we'd have gone home in a taxi with her. If that makes any sense, you know.
I love it. Never boring, always authentic. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Ian Holloway to GB News. Evening, Gaffer.
Good evening, Mark. How are you, mate?
I'm very well. An unadulterated fan. I really came to know you as a manager, but you achieved so much on the pitch as a player. Did you show a particular talent as a young lad?
Yeah, I got picked up by Bristol Rovers in a trial match when I was trialling for the county when I was 9 years old. It was an under-11s team, and they said, we want to train you 2 nights a week. And luckily for me, I chose Bristol Rovers, not Bristol City, because they both wanted me.
What a choice. Blimey, that definitely divides a town, doesn't it? And what were your qualities? I mean, was it a desire to win? Was it a work ethic? Or was it just natural skill?
Mate, I've never been blessed with natural skill. Well, I always wanted to be a player, and I would have done anything. I was so dedicated, I'd have done anything to try and be the best I could be. So I wanted someone to teach me. And really, the Bristol Rovers saw that in me and said that you'll make yourself a player.
You've played the game and you've managed in the game, and I've got no doubt there's a big management job coming, and we'll ask you about what's next for you shortly. But how has the game changed since you were a player?
So dramatically. Obviously, the money the players get paid these days is sort of astronomical. It's gone through the roof. The country hasn't got control of its main asset, which is most sellable asset, which is football, because of the deals. So the money's gone through the roof, but you know the speed of the game, how fit you can be now, the understanding of sports science, it's all gone to a whole nother level. But you know, I did what I could at the time, and I did it as best as I could, and luckily it was the people around me. You know, they reckon there's got to be 5 people that you meet through your life who have who change you for the better, and you know, luckily for me, I wanted to listen. So you know, now some of them don't listen at all, do they?
They don't seem to. Definitely not.
To it, mate. It drives me insane. These players these days. I love Roy Keane. He's on that line. He wants to kill them, doesn't he? When they don't do what he says.
Yeah, I mean, the dressing room is not supposed to be a democracy, is it, Ollie?
Not in any way, shape, or form should it be. We were all terrified of our managers years ago. And we were brought up in a time where we had respect for anybody who was in authority anywhere. Our teachers, my dad would go mental with me if I disobeyed anybody or did anything, and it hadn't done me any harm. So you know, I think these players should shut up and listen to a boss, because you know we're being undermined left, right, and centre by the way football is these days. You've got so many layers above you now. It used to be you and the chairman, and maybe a chief executive, but now you got all sorts of people getting in the way. But, you know, listen, the game is a wonderful game. It belongs to everybody. I've always said it. Girls can play, ladies can be professionals now. It's absolutely outstanding. It's a game of chess on the grass, and that's what fascinates me. There's not one way to play it. You can play any way you like. And unfortunately, it's like fashion. You know, it changes all the time, and you've got to be ready and adaptable to change.
I think there's a danger that people will forget just what you achieved on the pitch, particularly in Bristol and also at QPR. Well, I know. But how did your time as a player, how did that shape the manager that you would become?
I think your life shapes you. You know, as I say, I come from a council house. My mum and dad lived in a council house. My dad died and on the day he died, he was revived, and he was worried that the insurance was going to pay. So, you know, he taught me so many things about football and what I wanted to do, and gave me a drive to try and be successful. So it's everything in my life has led to the next thing, and really it's all about discipline. I was so disciplined that kept myself so fit because I knew I wasn't the best player in the world, but you know, the game needs someone to carry the piano onto the pitch to put it down for the artist to play it. And I was a midfield dynamo who could run and tackle. And luckily, I was taught how to give it quickly and to other people who could play. And, you know, you got to quickly find where you are in the world and try and utilise what you can do and be good at that. And I'm touching wood now, I'm honestly saying, being realistic about who I was and what I was good at was the secret for me.
Yeah. Now, you've had a long stint as a manager in many different clubs, and of course you achieved the ultimate Premier League miracle, taking Blackpool into the top flight. How did you evolve and develop as a manager?
That's a very good question, Mark. I could be here all night. In brief, it's about the people that you're with. You need to create an environment where they can learn and they're not afraid to learn. And luckily for me, I had a couple of failures, and depending on who you talk to, I was either successful or useless. So, you know, I'm glad you think I'm all right.
Absolutely.
But, you know, my time at Blackpool, I was ready. I'd done a lot of research. I realised what had gone wrong in my last job, and I wanted a team that I was going to convince that I knew what I was talking about and play an attacking type of football that I made up in a year, which I had spent out of the game doing some punditry. But I was researching. I went to Spain and looked at what they were doing. I asked some questions. I wrote down this monologue of what I wanted to do and why. And on I went with a group of people who were all in the same place as me. They'd all been somewhere and failed. And we all found ourselves in a perfect storm. And, you know, really it was them. I just had this theory in my head that I wanted to do this, but they are the artists. You know, I can put the canvas there, I can tell them what to do, but they are the ones that painted the picture every week, and they got better and better, and I'm still bursting with pride about them now. They're absolutely fantastic people, you know, and it really was the perfect storm. You know, the crowd sang a song every week. This is the best trip we've ever been on. So no matter, we were 3-0 down in one game and they were singing that song, mate, you know. And that's what they all played a part in it. Everybody, even the villain and Carl Oyston and his dad, they were villains to the fans, but to me they were needed. They were part of the picture, you know. And I still think about it now. And the lads who played in that team still keep in contact on a WhatsApp group, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I think that is fantastic to keep that relationship going. You're obviously a man manager, a motivator. We obviously, you know, hopefully at the tail end of this pandemic, Ian, what would you say to viewers who are feeling a bit down in the dumps and a bit worried about the future? How would you motivate Britain out of this pandemic?
Well, what another great question, mate. This is, it's very dear to my heart. I hope that we come out better human beings out of this pandemic, where we all put aside greed and we care for our fellow man or woman and look after each other. There's no reason on earth, apart from greed, that we shouldn't be looking after everybody now.
Yeah.
And that should be our utmost, particularly our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, on the planet that they're on. And I can't believe that so much bureaucracy gets in the way, and there's nobody who could just say, I'll tell you what, this is what we're doing. You know, we almost need to hand it over now, because some of these young people are out there saying what top politicians should be saying, and they're trying to force them to do it. You know, there's an advert on the telly, a little boy says, I'm only 6, how can it be me who does this? Sort it out. And I hope we come out of this better human beings and more caring about our planet, to make sure that the people after us, like the ones who fought in the wars for us, we wouldn't be here without them now. They did it for us. We should be doing it and fighting for the world now, because if we're not, and this greed carries on, our great-grandchildren probably won't be here. So let's come out of it, meeting each other, greeting each other, and caring, really, truly caring about one another.
Too right. And speaking of caring about one another, and I couldn't agree more with what you said, Ian, I echo every word. Let's talk about football and human rights. Of course, the World Cup next year is happening in Qatar. A pretty dreadful record on human rights abuses. What do you think about that? Have the authorities sold out?
Wow. Yeah. I was against it right from the off. You know, sport can't be bought, but in a lot of the world, corruption is in the way of people with good ideas. You know, luckily for us, football should stay out of that. You know, when the Big Six wanted to take over a few months ago or a year ago, at last football supporters went out there and said, no, we don't want part of that. And, you know, thank God for that, you know. So much should be done about it. And, you know, money shouldn't be able to buy everything, and you know, the timing of this. But unfortunately, the higher you go in life, my dad told me this, the higher you go, the more bullshit you'll see, if I can say that, the more unrealistic things get to, and it's just red tape. You know, I like someone like Simon Jordan, who's been there, done it, and it didn't go well, and he's still out in the world now and makes an awful lot of sense, you know, because things can't go right all the time. You've got to learn from your mistakes, and are we actually doing that at this moment in time? I don't, you know, you should be accountable for what you do and accountable for what you say, and really mean it. So, you know, I believe there's much more good than bad in the world, but, you know, people are fighting over money the world over, aren't they? And that can't be right, can it?
It cannot be right. There's such inequality. How about the vaccine? If you don't mind me asking you about this, as a former manager and, again, soon to be a manager, no doubt. Novak Djokovic, of course, in hot water in Australia because he won't declare, Ian, his vaccination status. What about the beautiful game of football? What do you think about players in the Premier League and in the Championship who won't get jabbed?
Yeah, it's a very difficult subject. You know, I believe in the spirit of free speech, but my players had to do what I told them. I would explain to them why I wanted them to do it. If they didn't believe, I would get rid of them, and I would bring someone in who did. So, you know, you can only stand and fall by your own word as a manager, but I can only speak for myself. And, you know, we haven't made this up. This is out there, and this is real. And I've had 2 jabs and my booster because my wife is in a vulnerable state. She's had cancer years ago, and you know, I didn't think that playing football was safe, to be honest, because how can you play football and stay 2 meters away from somebody, you know? So, you know, it was all very, very, very difficult, and I got to be honest, that's probably why I'm not in a managerial post anymore, because I didn't agree with that. I wanted us to come out of this. I realised in horror that we were just entertainment, a wonderful entertainment that you can't describe when your family pass it down to you. Most people love football because somebody special in their family they spent time with and brought them into it, you know. So, you know, the game itself is absolutely vital to our nature in the United Kingdom. And at every level it is important, so we should be sharing it out. So I believe my players, I would have wanted them and I would have sat them down, I would have brought an expert in to explain to them why. What the vaccine does, how it works, what it's going to do to them, and I would get them to make a more informed decision. That's how I would have felt, and I would have wanted to try and push them towards having. I don't know what people are scared of. I don't understand why they're scared of a vaccine or scared that the government will be tracing us everywhere we go. And well, just leave your phone at home. You know, why have you got to have your phone with you? Don't make sense. I don't understand, you know, but surely a vaccine will help you.
Well, absolutely. Now, a couple of other things to talk to you about, Ian, and it's such a privilege to have you on the show. There's only one openly gay footballer in the world. I'm sure that you know more than one gay footballer, but there's obviously a climate in which gay men who play football don't want to come out. Josh Cavallo plays in Australia. He's been on this programme, a brilliant guy, I think quite a talented footballer as well, Ian. He's been on social media today saying he was subjected to homophobic abuse whilst playing for Adelaide United yesterday. Do you think that we'll ever have a time where gay footballers can come out?
I hope so. I've literally just taken my wife Kim away to Brighton, and their supporters get hammered, don't they, because of how wonderfully free and open that city or town is. You know, at the end of the day, I don't care what someone does. It's up to them. Yeah. I have my own views on things, and as long as they don't hurt other people and they don't force themselves upon other people, if it's with consenting adults, what's it to do with me? Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't be peeking into your window, Mark, to find out what you're doing. It's none of my business. So, you know, as long as people play football the right way and try and do what they try and be in teammates, then I'm glad that we're not all the same. That's how I feel.
Too right. So many tweets coming in and emails as well. You've got a lot of fans out there, Ian. This is from Caleb on Twitter, who asks, Ian, what do you think of billionaires from countries with questionable human rights records buying Premier League clubs, i.e. Newcastle, and the fans embracing it? That fits with a question from Ronald about whether Eddie Howe, with the financial backing from Newcastle, can win the Premier League.
Mate, I got mixed feelings about all of this. You know, I've been the underdog an awful lot in my lifetime, and that suits me. The way I was brought up, it suits me. I had to work hard for what I was doing. So I don't mind anyone with money, providing they got it fairly. Do we think they've got it fairly? Probably. Who knows? Who knows? But I don't understand how countries can own English football clubs. You know, I think there's a fight for them. Americans seem to like them and want to own them. Russians seem to like them and want to own them. And now, God knows who else is doing it, you know. So what you have to do is trust in the system. And I think right now would be a great time to override what we've done in the past and redo it down to that wonderful lady who made total sense of what we should do in football. And I think the government should now do that and do exactly what she says. And we take back control of our own game and how we do it in this country, because it's almost non-contact now. The beautiful thing about the English game, it was a contact sport and you could play it and the tackles were good and fair and there's nothing wrong with a good hard tackle.
Oh, what a shame we have lost the line to Ian Holloway.
It's infuriating. It's more like wrestling.
Well,
Did
yeah,
you
we lost
me
you
there?
for a second there. We lost you, Ian, but we've got you back. Listen, we could talk to you for hours. I do hope you'll join us again on the show, and it's been a real privilege to have you on the programme. Lots of people, Joe in Twitter wants to know where you learnt your dance moves from in that viral video. I mean, listen, you are one of the great characters of the game. Do you think football's getting boring now? Corporates?
Listen, I never get bored with the game. I really don't. I think there's some marvellous coaches out there. People are trying to impose their personalities on there. The wonderful tussles between Guardiola and Klopp and how well they're doing. You know, young Steve Cooper's doing a fantastic job at Nottingham Forest, as we saw tonight. And, you know, the games keeps moving all the time. And I'm so pleased because it's taught me about life. It's taught me that I can be average at certain things, but I can bring whatever I'm good at to my team and they will help me. So without the game of football, my life would not have been worth living. You know, so I have been so lucky. I've met some wonderful people and I've tried as hard as I can to do it well, but there's no guarantees. You just got to go with the flow and you got to try and ride everything out and make sure you realize the most important thing about being a human being is you need other people. You can't do it on your own. And that's what has been so bad the last 2-3 years, where we can't behave how we would love to, even with our own loved ones, you know, our families, you know. So I hope that people still have the will to keep fighting and, you know, because I believe in good. And if you've lost someone that you loved, and try and remember what my dad said. I lost him an awful long time ago now. He said, son, it's better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all. So if you're hurting at the moment, my heart's with you, my family's with you, and hopefully we'll have something to have in common further down the line, because football should be protected and should be run correctly. And we could talk for hours on that alone.
Ian, look, the clock's against us. We're on Fergie time, but let me very briefly ask you, with a few seconds to go, right? It's not too late for a last-minute equaliser. What's next? You ought to be in football management. So what are your ambitions going forward?
Mate, I'm trying to do something different. Wait a minute. We're
going to get another viral video. Is this another dance move?
I'll be there in 1 second. Hang on.
You take your time. I'll fill.
I've got my first commission.
Let's have a look at this. Is that a piece of art that you created?
Yes.
Right, and my producer, James, has recognised it as Paolo Di Canio.
That's exactly right. He's kissing the West Ham shirt. This is for Jack Matey. I was going to charge him for it, but I'm going to give it to him. Hopefully he can show a lot of people and I might get some more commissions, mate.
That's unbelievable. So you are a fine artist as well as a fine manager.
I wouldn't say that.
But that's...
I tried to do one of Pep Guardiola last night, got so fed up with it. You know, because he got a bit of head like a bit of a peanut, you know, and he looks great. And his eyes, every time I drew one eye, it looked bigger than the other one. And in the end, he looked all wrong. But, you know, at the end of the day, I got to try something different. There's a lot of fantastic young people now taking up. I want the young ones to get jobs. If you look at Steven Gerrard, that era, Frank Lampard was doing really well, in my opinion. You know, I want them to step forward and bring their ideas. And, you know, if I was offered a bit of consultancy, you know, maybe I got to wait a little bit, and one of my players will be really successful, because 3 of them are being managers at the moment, you know. But I've done it for 40 years, and the time you got to give away from your family is quite scary. So I can sit down. I painted that in about 2 days, a little bit here, a little bit there, and you know, I want to learn. I want to learn something new, mate, you know. So this has been lovely talking to you. I got all sorts of opinions on other things in the world as well. And I put the common sense that I've had to have when I took over QPR the first time. We got relegated, and then I cut their budget in half and put them back where they were 2 years later, 3 years later. So people they only remember my jokes. They don't, you know, oh, you're funny, you are. Well, I'm not a comedian, am I? No. That don't mean I'm good, but I've had to laugh my way through with deaf children, and you know, I got 7 grandchildren. It's fantastic, Mark, and you know, I just hope you and your program is successful. I've seen clips of it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love your panel just now. You know, talking about, they made me worry because my pension ain't too good, to be perfectly honest with you. But there you go. Such is life. I've helped my kids out before I'm dead. You know, I've gifted them some money so they can live, you know, and they can get on the housing market. Because how can young people do it these days? Frightening, mate. Absolutely frightening. So anyway, it's been lovely talking to you. If you ever want me on again, not a problem. But, mate, keep going and keep sticking what you think right up on. Because you make total sense, mate. That's how I feel. Total sense.
That is high praise from the gaffer himself. Ian, I know you're a talented painter and a brilliant pundit, but I do think that you're missed in the world of top-flight football. But I wish you every success. And yes, an open invitation. We'd love to have you back on the show very soon. Very talented artist as well. How can people find out about your art? Is there a website or anything?
I haven't got it up and running yet.
OK, well, I tell you what, please get in touch when it's ready, because I know that there are people out there that would love to bid for your work. And my producer, James, wants to commission you to do a painting of Harry Kane lifting the World Cup. We were going to say the Premier League, but that's probably stretching reality. Ian, catch up soon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good luck.
Brilliant stuff. Ian Holloway there, footballer, manager, painter, man of multiple talents. Lots more to come. Don't forget, Headliners, a comedic romp through the papers after 11. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead then to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy with hill fog in the west. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle edging eastwards, so let's take a look at the detail. Well, very cloudy and murky across the southwest of England on Monday morning, with extensive hill fog over the moors. Patchy rain as well lying over eastern areas. It'll be dry but mostly cloudy as it starts off in the southeast, with the best of any brightness in the east, feeling chilly too. Wales starts the day on a wet note with outbreaks of rain or drizzle for most. It'll be murky with low cloud and hill fog. In contrast, it'll be a mostly dry picture for the northwest of England, although it will also be cloudy. There'll be low cloud and hill fog with patchy rain arriving from the west. And a similar story for the northeast of England on Monday morning, another cloudy start with the best of any brightness along the coast, feeling rather chilly as well. Outbreaks of rain covering most of Scotland, except for the far east where it'll start cold and dry, the rain falling as snow over the highest mountains. Northern Ireland starting cloudy and murky with hill fog and a little light drizzle in places, breezy too around the coasts, but feeling generally milder. Rain, drizzle and low cloud slowly edging eastwards throughout Monday, and it's going to be milder than of late for all. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Dan Wootton, join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Because apparently all the same.
You were watching GB News, and we were just actually enjoying a demonstration of a bit of virtual history from our brilliant panellist, Andre Walker, who is with us tonight alongside Ingrid Tarrant and Mike Parry. Really brilliant to have your company as well. Thanks for all the emails. I'll get to them very shortly. Don't forget, tomorrow's newspaper front pages at 11 in another edition of Headliners. I'll be in the company of two top comics. Enjoying a bit of levity and will, of course, reflect on what tomorrow's newspapers will be saying. But now let's react to the big stories of today. Ingrid Tarrant is here, Mike Parry and Andre. A theatre practitioner of 19 years who was forced out of her job for wearing a crucifix has spoken out for the first time since winning a case against Croydon NHS Trust. Mary Onooa was told to remove her crucifix for work, but she felt she was targeted because it was a symbol of her Christian faith. She said, "This has always been an attack on my faith. My cross has been with me for more than 40 years. It's part of me and my faith, and it's never caused anyone any harm." At this hospital, there are members of staff who go to a mosque 4 times a day, and no one says anything to them. So what do we think about this? Is there a degree, Mike Parry, of sort of anti-Christian sentiment going on?
I don't think it's so much anti-Christian. We're still a Christian country. Christianity is still the biggest religion in the world. 1/3 of the people on earth are Christians in the various forms, OK? Because it's not just Church of England, Catholic and Jewish and all that kind of stuff. What I think it is the modern-day trend where you have to look after minorities because it makes you feel a better person, and you persecute majorities.
And you don't, when you say minorities, you don't mean skin colour, you just mean smaller groups in society.
That's
because you were unnecessarily hauled over the coals for referring to minorities in the past, but you were willfully misunderstood, weren't you?
Yeah, yes, I was. I was talking about the M26 protesters and saying a few people stopped the country. One of the traffic jams went 60 miles up the M1 when the M25 was stopped. And I said, for a tiny minority like that to disrupt the country, you've got to clamp down on minorities. And, of course, somebody took that clip out of context, just took that clip, and I got all the abuse about, how dare you talk about people like this and all that kind of stuff.
You mean small interest groups?
I mean small interest groups. That's minorities. Now, there is positive discrimination against all sorts of minority groups in this country, OK? And we all know what they are. I'm not going to list them in a great long list. People attack me. But anybody who belongs to a culture or a group of people who are literally maybe in their hundreds or just their thousands, gets the weight of, the woke society.
Well, we're tying ourselves in knots over the trans issue.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. The weight of society to make themselves feel better, the liberal left, I'm a better person than you because I want to throw taxpayers' money at everything in this country. I want to throw help and assistance to anybody who's having a hard time, even if it's their own fault, because it makes me feel better to go after minority groups and help them because I'm in the majority. And that's exactly the same with this poor woman. I mean, this poor woman's cross, they tried to say, it carries germs. This cross around your neck on a little necklace.
A stainless steel or silver cross?
A silver cross.
Do me a favour.
They tried to say to it, carries germs, that's why you can't wear it. And you quite rightly say, other people following another faith were actually going out and praying 4 times a day. It's outrageous because the woman concerned belongs to a huge majority of people who believe the same way as she did, but in this particular building, she was in a tiny minority of one, and the others were the majority, although worldwide they're not the majority. But other people felt we've got to help them.
And of course, you want to say that if you're a Muslim, then it's obviously you're calling in your faith to pray, and if you're Jewish, you might wear a couple on your head, and there's any number of different things that you can wear which represent your faith.
Yeah,
why should the crucifix be, banned?
Yeah, well, first of all, there is no religious requirement for a Christian to wear a crucifix, but then again, there is absolutely no religious requirement for a Muslim to wear a burqa, and therefore there are certain things that are cultural, which we accept, right? OK. I will say one thing that does worry me. I think time and time again, this sort of action encourages and excites racism. And I'll tell you why. Because immediately people will say, oh, well, this is a Christian in a Christian society being discriminated against by the Muslims, which is not true. But time and time again, people say that. It reminds me of when Birmingham City Council wanted Christmas to be referred to as Winterval. And the first thing they turned around and said was, we're doing it because the Muslims might be offended. You went down to the local mosque and these guys would say, well, we're not remotely offended because A, Jesus is an Islamic prophet, and B, the fact that you celebrate his birthday is in no way offensive to us. So I actually think that what frustrates me is we attempt to attack these people, like the woman in a cross. I say we collectively as a society. We attack these people. Then we blame the minority for us attacking it. Time and time again, it's a liberal white apologist who's never met a Muslim in their life.
So, and they still call it Happy Holidays, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, too right. I mean, what do you think also, this little crucifix? I mean, it's a tiny little... We're not talking about something out of The Exorcist here.
Yeah.
She's not walking around with a clove of garlic and a, steak in her hand.
But she did, and that was her belief. Do you know, it doesn't matter. But it is recognised. It is Christianity recognised from, the day that Jesus was crucified. I think it's so sad. Unfortunately, it's just quite surprising that Christianity actually is sort of like the majority religion, but it's not so evident. You don't see it that much. I mean, I know sort of like the Catholic Church is always full on a Sunday because they have to kind of go. A bit like, the Jews go to the synagogue every...
Obligation.
Yes, it is. Whereas... C of E people don't so much. So it's not so visible as such. So I think that the cross made it kind of a little bit...
Christians are very tolerant of all of the faiths, aren't we? I'm a Christian, so I say we. But we are very tolerant.
Yeah.
And in this particular situation, look at this story, it wasn't the other workers who complained. The other workers who were Muslims did not complain.
Yeah.
The complaint came from the management of the establishment in which she worked. Because they decided to take on the case for Muslim people being offended. But they didn't say they were offended.
Offended on somebody else's behalf. It's a common problem. But I'll tell you one thing that I do think is a problem with Christianity in this country. Now, this may make me being unfair to other people. My dad's Greek Orthodox, my mum was Catholic, and I'm a Catholic. But I have to say, this system whereby the Prime Minister effectively decides the bishops of the Church of England just means that entire faith is just infested with the woke brigade. Half of them seem to have no interest whatsoever. I mean, I remember debating a bishop of the Church of England. They're always arguing for higher taxes, aren't they? By the way, their church is exempt from tax, so they're not bothered.
And they're very wealthy.
They're talking about poverty in this country at the same time as the Archbishop of Canterbury's building a £27 million library in his own official residence. And you think to yourself, to what extent do these people care about religion? And to what extent are they just in it for themselves?
And they closed their doors to worshippers during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
With very little protest at the government's measures.
But they've been closed for a long time because of looters.
There's a moral case against lockdowns. I've spoken to a senior Scottish cleric who actually took the Scottish government to court over church
but if you think about
the first lockdown, and he won.
Mark, can I just throw this in? Remember, the bishops of the Church of England have seats in the House of Lords. They could go and vote against the churches being closed. No evidence of that happening, though, was there?
Going back to the nurse, I want to go back to 2009. And I don't know if you remember this, but there's a Caroline Petrie, I believe that's her surname, and she was suspended for offering to pray for a patient that was dying.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember that.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
And the
she
person...
lose her job or threatened?
Yes, she was suspended. And the NHS and the RCN, the Royal College of Nursing, encouraged her to just kind of like drop this whole thing. And I think the whole thing is completely shocking. What was worse was that she offered to pay this person and they accepted it. They were very happy for it. In fact, they were happy, content. They seemed to be at peace. And that is purely sort of Christianity. It's not ramming it down their throat or anything like this. And do you know what? If I was in a hospital somewhere, I don't know what the religion of the person was, but if I was somewhere else where the religion was, say, Muslim or Jewish or something, and I was dying, and they said, shall I pray for you? I'd be very happy for that. It's caring, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a belief. It's something that sort of should comfort. It's not meant to offend at all. You know, people go offended. Now, funnily enough, they were reported by a nurse in the hospital that was taken up higher. So it's horrible. It's woke.
Yes.
It is
that was
woke.
an early example of wokeism,
Exactly, in 2009. We're going back that far.
Yeah, and in fact, what it actually was an act of empathy and love.
Totally.
Absolutely.
For the kindest, a caring person.
But there's no empathy for the woke warriors, is there?
No.
No, none whatsoever. They're a tiny minority. Wokeism erupted after Twitter started because most people don't realise that only about, I think it's about 15% of people in the world are on Twitter.
Correct.
Of those 15%, 1% put out 95% of the tweets. So they're the fanatics who all the time are banging the drum for the causes they love, but 99% of people don't care about it.
But we live... But we're
all of a sudden,
them,
it's not that we're patronising, it's all sorts of politicians run scared every time they get a tweet which says, we don't think you're very good.
We live in a society, Mark, we live in a society where what you say is more important than what you do. And they can see you, by the way. It only just came on me. See you waving at the gallery.
It's live TV.
But,
we love it. Go on.
But I genuinely believe what you say is more important than what you do. You can be an enabler for Harvey Weinstein. You can be somebody who has no interest in anything other than yourself. You can be lazy, arrogant, ignorant, stupid, but as long as you put out something with the hashtag #MeToo, then you are a good person as a result. And I just think we need to return to the days when what you do is more important than what you say. I mean,
it'll never happen.
At the end of the day, I'd never heard about this thing about your minority thing, but what you just said sounded wholly reasonable to me. But I can imagine what happens. And actually, the fact that you've been a caring Christian your entire life, just because you got clipped out of context, is a
one
nightmare.
person took a 6-second clip, literally, out of a 3-hour show, and put it out and put a caption on it himself. It was somebody who hasn't liked me for a lot of years who just took advantage of it.
OK, well, look, one last hurrah from my amazing panel after this short break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Thanks for so many emails that are coming in, and the panel are going down a storm tonight. Mike Parry, Andre Walker and Ingrid Tarrant. a hand-picked dream team. Now, those of you who still have a New Year's resolution may have 10 more days before you can justify packing it in. Now, earlier in the show, we mistakenly said that people have given up their New Year's resolutions by today, but it's actually the 19th. So a correction on that one, the 19th. It's been labelled National Quitters Day, where people abandon their New Year's vows. But I think I've got to say, based on our production team, most people have failed by today. A poll from over 1,500 people found that 24% of Brits have already fallen off the wagon just a week into 2022, and the rest of them are liars. And now, what I love about you guys is that you're authentic, entertaining, witty and fun, but you also all enjoy a refreshment. You enjoy a drink, don't you? Mike, occasional libation. Have you ever done dry January?
Never in my life. I just don't get it. January is the worst possible month to deprive yourself of drink. Firstly, you've got over all the partying for Christmas and New Year. Are you then going to say to yourself, right, I'm going to punish myself now for 30 days until I have a drink again? Particularly the sort of weather we've been suffering the last couple of days. Now, I get up sometimes at 4:30 in the morning. I can be out at 5:30 when the rain is pelting down. If I don't know that at the end of that working day, at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's going to be a frothing pint of beer waiting for me on a pub, right, on a pub bar, life isn't worth living.
You wouldn't get up in the morning.
I wouldn't get up in the morning. I wouldn't bother going out. I'd stay in bed for January. I've never done it in my life. I think it's pathetic. And I think anybody who thinks they're a better person for depriving themselves of alcohol for 30 days needs their head examining.
There you go. I mean, spoken from
Can I just say this? I wish he was my dad.
Oh, it'd be perfect. He's far too young, but hey, never say never.
Yeah.
We could adopt you, perhaps. Might be a bit creepy. But what do you think about this, Ingrid? Do you think New Year's resolutions work?
It depends, really. But the drinking thing, I wouldn't think could ever possibly work, that you give up, because you're supposed to celebrate at midnight. So within 1 second, you've broken that resolution not to drink anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a big fat no-no in my diary as well. Don't ever say that. But, you know, funny enough, I don't do resolutions, in actual fact, but I look at the resolutions that people do. So eat healthily, go to the gym. Never go to the gym. I couldn't bear it. Various things like that. It's more about lifestyle and a healthier approach and mindset. But I like the thought that people are thinking they're going to do that, or starting a diet on a Monday almost, but this is the beginning of the year. But I try to do that all through. I'm trying to be conscious of that every day of my life. And if I fail, it doesn't matter, because I haven't made it a resolution. I would like to aspire to be that healthier eating person, go out for a longer walk, perhaps at the weekend or something like that. So, no, resolutions.
So I quite like that.
You're setting yourself up to fail a lot of the time.
Dawn French, the wonderful comedian, she tweeted something about that, saying, look, every day can be New Year's Day, sort of thing. And I think that's a nice way of looking at it. When you go to bed, that is your chance to call time on bad habits and start again. But a lot of people see that first of January.
But hang on a second. She's morbidly obese. Right, she must...
Well, she's not anymore, really.
Oh, isn't she?
No.
Oh, OK. Maybe
she might have slimmed down.
She was a panellist on a show recently, wasn't she? Some new show. Was it Simon Cowell's new show?
Oh, is that right? On ITV,
yeah, she was a judge in the middle, and I couldn't recognise her. I thought I was looking at the Vicar of Dibley. You know, Vicar of Dibley. I couldn't recognise her.
She's shrunk. I mean, what do you think? You've actually given up a few things already. Like last year, you've gone on a bit of a diet, haven't you?
Yeah, I did.
Really?
Look, before I say
very harsh.
Before I say anything, if anybody takes dietary advice from a political commentator, they're an idiot. But to be fair, I've started very tentatively with this just eat less carbohydrates thing, which seems to work quite well. I mean, look, everybody put on a lot of weight. You didn't see me before, by the way. But everybody put on a lot of weight.
We only used to book 2 panellists because there was enough for you.
and he had his own postcode, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. When I walked backwards, I beeped. All the old favourites. But no, look, I think you can do things that improve your life. But I have to say, I think there's a lot of pressure doing it on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, my brilliant panel who agree have absolutely thrown it out of the park. So much more to come, because we're going to have a romp through tomorrow's newspaper front pages, an exclusive first look with 2 top comedians. I'll see you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead then to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy with hill fog in the west. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle edging eastwards, so let's take a look at the detail. Well, very cloudy and murky across the southwest of England on Monday morning, with extensive